Good evening. And if you're just tuning in, thanks for hanging in there. We're starting a little bit late. You are listening to the Angel Rock Live with Lorilei Potvin. If you're listening, come on over and watch us. We are under UFO Paranormal Radio on YouTube. We have UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials, and I think it's International Radio is our third channel. We're also on Twitch and on my Facebook profile, which is under Lorilei Potvin. We're under UFO Paranormal Radio on Facebook. We're also on Twitter, I believe I set it up to run tonight, and my YouTube channel. So we're streaming in quite a few places. So, but if you go to our main YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio, I will see your comments here. If you're on Facebook and you're commenting, sometimes they don't show up, so I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you. And if you're returning, thank you for joining us. Like you always do, we've got a great crew that usually joins us live here. Also, if you're just turning in for the first time, a little bit about myself. I'm Lorilei Potvin. I'm a Canadian psychic medium. I'm a crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, a spiritual teacher and mentor, and I am also a registered nurse. In my show, The Angel Rock, I say I always cover all aspects of the supernatural and anything in between. But the guests that I have on through either their work or the extracurricular activities that they do are making a positive change for humanity. And I've been telling you she's coming. I've been telling you for 2 weeks. Let me read a little bit of a bio for her. Her name is Mariel Forde Clarke. She hails from lovely Ireland and is an author, has had a near-death experience, or an NDE as we may refer to it tonight. She's a spiritual teacher and holistic counselor and many other things. She is the author of an amazing book called Where After? Where Do Our Loved Ones Go After They Die? So, welcome, Marielle. I'm so glad to have you here this evening.
Hey, I'm all excited, Lorilei.
I
Blessings and greetings from Ireland.
I love, you know what, though, it doesn't matter wherever you speak to people in a different country, they'll always comment on the accent. I'm sure you hear, I love your accent. It's so charming. Oh,
Real flat and maybe too fast. I better slow it down and
mm-mm.
not too for tonight.
I could understand you because I was very lucky. Del Vidal, as we call him on here, of the Delicious Recipe, my partner in crime, his show is on Thursday nights. He had Marielle on first and didn't know how to produce a show at that time. So I popped on and got to meet her beforehand. And oh, you were such a sweet woman. I was so excited. Della had to work tonight.
Well,
He was going to come on when we originally were
oh,
scheduled,
bless.
and due to unexpected things happen in life, but he was going to pop on, and he does that with guests I find that he likes. He just
Oh,
comes on.
well, send them a great big squeeze from me, an
I
Irish
will.
squeeze.
I will. I will. Gosh, I don't even know where to start with you. I guess maybe at the beginning. Now, most of my listeners have heard me as a nurse talk about this, but even before, I have studied near-death experiences for over 40 years, professionally as well as personally. And I believe I had one as a toddler. So this is right up my alley. So are you comfortable discussing like what your experience was like, where, how did you discover that there's an afterlife, and the things that you talk about and speak about and write about
Mhm.
now?
Absolutely. And it's such a for me, first of all, I suppose, like you, Lauralee, I have a scientific background,
Hmm.
and I
I
qualified
see.
many moons ago as a siderologist, right?
Oh,
And
very nice. Hmm.
yes, and but my background really, I'll just give a little intro to my background. My grandmother was extremely psychic,
Okay.
and I had an uncle who was the seventh son of a seventh son, which means that there was a
Oh,
double gift in the
yes,
family when there were
yes.
seven sons after
Hmm.
one another with no daughters in between.
Hmm.
And then the next generation, my grandmother and then her mother, there were seven sons of seven sons. So this was
Wow.
yeah, with no daughter in between. So this
There's
was a
movies about that. I have
is
seen some.
there
There's a
really?
movie out by Disney. I think it's called Seventh Son. And it talks almost
Really?
like, I swear to God, they were writing your family's story. It was like three generations, the seventh son of seven
Oh,
sons, and how there was something very powerful, magical, and important about that seventh son.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And that seventh son in each of the families was extremely gifted and
Yep.
psychic.
Hmm.
But then that time, Lorilei, in Ireland, it was perceived as nearly a curse or a devil's
Oh.
curse. If you had any kind of psychic powers, you were deemed as a witch, like
Mhm.
I was up to a few years ago. I'm
Mhm.
not sure what they called me now, but
They still do it though, Effie, or I'm saying Effie, sorry, I got Effie on the brain. Effie, welcome. She's watching from Windsor, Ontario. I meant to say
hello,
Marielle,
Effie.
sorry. I was seeing her name up there.
Not at all.
No, but depending on who you run into with religious
Yeah.
dogma,
Yes, of
we
course.
still get those kind of things, those of us
And
in these fields.
speaking of religion, religious dogma, like I am very spiritual, but I was raised Catholic, and
Me too.
I was
Hmm.
educated by nuns, the wonderful
Hmm.
blessed nuns.
Yes.
As I said, I can't give out about them because they have done great service to
Hmm.
humanity in
Well,
many places. But unfortunately, my experience with the nuns was not great at
I
all.
haven't heard anybody, including myself, because I had nuns teach throughout my
Yeah.
Catholic education as well. And like you, was raised forced, I myself forced to go to church. I've had every sacrament practically,
Mhm.
except thank God the last rites. And I'm very deeply
Mhm.
spiritual, and we do.
Yeah.
You know this about me. We've talked about this off air, but again, with the religious
Yeah.
dogma, depending on who you talk to. Sorry,
Yes,
carry
of
on. I had
course.
to pop in there with that.
Not at all, but it is all
Mhm,
very relevant, and
mhm,
it does change the course of your life as we grow and
mhm.
spiritually awaken.
Right.
So my grandmother kind of hid her gifts,
Mhm.
and but the back door was always where people would come for her to sit and do her psychic predictions and her readings, and
Ah,
it never the front door, it was the
right.
back door, and
Mhm,
then nobody, it was all hushed, right?
mhm.
So, and my brother as well, who returned home to spirit, was extremely psychic. And
Absolutely.
he was a medical administrator in Harley Street in London. And he was able to say, predict his own passing as well, 3 weeks
Ah,
before he passed.
mhm.
And he was just 36. So,
Oh,
yeah. So I was so used to psychic phenomena. I was so used to it was natural. And I would speak to angels and guides, and I would see them, and I would see their silhouette. It was nothing strange, but I also thought that everybody could see and hear what I was seeing and hearing.
yeah.
I
Mhm,
thought it was
mhm.
only when I was kind of growing up that I
Yeah.
realized not everybody, you know.
Mhm,
So that was a big kind of a wake up call as
mhm.
well, to stay very quiet. And then at the age of 15, 16, I had my first spiritual experience. And that
Okay.
was with the beautiful Mother Mary. And
Oh.
that, yeah. And she's my ascended master now. And
Mhm,
she works with me during my healing sessions. And
mhm.
she's just incredible. She's one of my ascended masters that works with me now.
People may not understand, some people, what an ascended master is. So would you mind share? I know it is, but would you mind sharing what an ascended
You would
master is
probably
to you?
do a much better job than I will, Lorilei, because
Mhm.
like everything else, I'll assume people would know. An
Yep.
ascended master is somebody who has walked on earth,
Yes.
who has assumed a physical body, and
Mhm.
has had lifetimes upon lifetimes of soulful work upon the earth. And when they transition to the afterlife, then they can become guides. But Mother
Mhm.
Mary was one that was in called upon many, many millennia ago. And I am just blessed that she is one of my guides. And I have Saint Germain of the Violet Flame
Oh,
also.
I love Saint Germain. Oh,
He's
I love
mine.
him.
You can't have him.
He's not mine. He's not
And
mine, but I love him.
oh
Actually,
yeah,
I'm not a crier. I don't cry very easy, but I
yeah,
am literally in tears when you bring up Mother Mary,
yeah,
because I've had many experiences with her. I don't work with her that often,
yeah.
but because I don't, and this isn't to come from a place of pity or victimhood or anything for anybody listening, I don't have a good mother or great mother.
Yeah.
And for many reasons, um, I've sort of walked through later in life without any mother in my
Hmm.
life. But when times have been very tough, Mother Mary has come through, and the love there, the human language does not describe the level of love, compassion, empathy, understanding, and wisdom from all our guides, but
Yeah.
especially I find with Mother Mary. Hmm.
Even as you're saying that now, Laura Lee, I see her placing her mantle of blue healing light around
Yes.
you.
Oh, thank you.
Draping. Yeah, I'm even getting shivers here now.
I'm getting teary, and I don't
Yeah.
get like this because like
But
I said,
she,
love
as
isn't
we know,
strong enough.
she's the mom.
Yes,
She's
yes.
the, not alone is she the
Mhm,
universal mother, but
mhm,
she's the earth mother. That
mhm.
and she holds all of her children in her bosom of love and
Yes.
light in our challenging times, as well
Mhm,
as the good times, but
mhm,
most so during the challenging times. So
mhm.
my first spiritual experience was when I was at that
Oh,
age,
beautiful.
and then you see to kind of just presume I was normal, I decided I would follow the sciences, which was the other side of my brain completely.
Yes.
And that's when I studied serology and became a
Mhm.
serologist. And then everything was going more or less hunky dory as such. Well, then life happened in between,
Yes.
marriage and a breakup of marriage and children. And and then in 1992, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, a
Oh,
very advanced form of cervical cancer. And at that stage, I suppose, Lorilei, I was, it didn't bother me. I had no fear of the cancer, even though they
mhm.
said it was very advanced and all that, because I was very unhappy in my life and
Right.
in my marriage. So being told I had cancer was just, just another day at the office as such. It
Another
didn't
brick in the wall.
it didn't bother me. And then I said, well, it's one way of kind of, releasing the pressure that I'm under at this moment in time. Because like that, Lauralee, in Ireland, we had no divorce at that stage. And
Oh,
we had no divorce, and we were just after initiating separation laws. So, and they were very stringent and very, very strict. So the old cliche in Ireland, you made your bed, so you lie in it.
lay in it. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I just
So
said that
that,
today.
yeah, really. So
Mhm,
that was the old dogma that I
mhm.
was still living under. And then, and the secrecy of not able to tell anybody that I was so unhappy and that my life was, and my marriage was, bless my marriage and bless my ex-husband who has now made his transition. He was my greatest teacher. I learned so much from him and through him. And, as my soul has evolved, I have realized without all the chaos that was presented during that marriage, I would not be even talking to you today.
I
So
agree.
there is many blessings while there was many curses as well.
Mhm.
But, and then in 1992, as I said, I was on the operating table, and I just during the surgery I was floating out of my body and looking down at this one that I said, geez, that one looks like me.
Mhm,
And I didn't know what all the chaos was about. They were
mhm,
frantically working on me, and
mhm.
they were trying to resuscitate me, and I was in this beautiful, beautiful peace, the most peace I had felt for years. And
No
then
pain, right? No
no
pain.
pain,
No worries.
no nothing. And I
Mhm.
was then just catapulted into this. I explain it, it was not a tunnel. And while there are huge commonalities with the near death experiencers,
Mhm.
not everyone is exactly the same.
I agree. I
The
agree.
commonalities are huge, but then there is slightly differences.
Mhm,
Mine was, I was like in a whirlpool, and
mhm.
the whirlpool was going like that, like an energy vortex.
Right?
And I was being pulled right into the center of it. And as I was being pulled into the center of it, I just felt this incredible, incredible love, this incredible peace, this, and the music. Then I started to hear this
Ooh.
profound music. It was, I have never ever heard music like it since. I have tried with all the mantras, with all the Buddhist mantras, and the Tibetan and the singing bowls and the Hinduism and all the music that goes there, diva, primal, none of them. The music that I heard was, I suppose, heavenly.
Yes.
And yes, and it was just so beautiful. And then I found myself just being pulled further into this beautiful light. But all around this light, as as I was entering it, it was like a kaleidoscope of color. It was just incredible,
Mhm,
profound colors,
mhm,
and I was being pulled further. But as I was being pulled further into it, I was surrendering
mhm.
peacefully to wherever I was going. It was just, I was being held sacred and safe. No pain, no fear, which I experienced dreadfully in physical form. No fear, no anxiety, just undiluted love. And then, as I was surrendering myself and going further into this whirlpool of love and light, this hand comes out from this mist, this golden mist, this big, big hand. And it was like a stop sign to say, go no further. And then I remember just kind of in a second, just feeling a pull, a huge pull. And I was back in my body and I could hear them saying, she's back. We've got her back. And it was about 3 days later, 2 or 3 days later, when the surgeon, I'm sure he was there before that, but when I was physically, because there was extensive surgery, I had about 9 or 10 surgeries that day.
Wow.
And but he said, you're very lucky, you're one lucky lady, he says, to be alive. And I said, why the hell didn't you just leave me where I was? I said, I was quite
Yeah.
happy. So he knew about the death experience. And that's another thing, Lorilei. I asked Dr. Peter Fenwick, because I was on a panel with him some time ago. And I asked Dr. Peter, and he's an amazing guy into near-death experiences. You may have heard of him, an incredible guy. And he's spent his life now on research, and especially with children and near-death. And I said to him, why, Peter, do they call it the near-death experience? I said, we were dead. I was dead. They said I was dead. Everything was gone. And he says, that's a very good question.
It
He
is.
says, yes, because you have been dead. And then he was saying, because of modern technology, that resuscitation is so kind of normal now. Years and years ago, they didn't have it. If they didn't have it with their hands, there was no machine to do the work. Now there is machines, and there's a new type of drug to be administered and all of that. So he was saying, maybe that's it. Maybe that's why they call it the near death,
I think
So,
it's always been called that because I
yeah,
always say in my nursing career, and I hurt my back very severely, so I haven't been able to go back, but I still stay on top, and we don't lose our medical knowledge, as you know,
no.
being in the field yourself. I've been so deeply blessed to be there hundreds and hundreds of times at the beginning of life, working in the NICU and labor and
Yeah.
delivery and maternal newborn. And then I went into the community, and there was a lot of technical stuff I did, program developed, the whole bit, right? But the biggest thing I did that was one of my greatest teachers, there were two things. I almost didn't take the job because I was put into. Are you hearing any double talk at all? I am. I just want to make sure you're not.
No, it's
Okay, good.
perfect. Perfect,
No
my
worries.
angel.
So
Perfect.
I got put in the most dangerous part of the city with the most low income, drug addicted, prostitution. There was murder, there was rape, there was everything. And I only went in my office every 2 weeks. So nobody, I mean, somebody could have strung me up on the wall, some of the places I had to go into by
Yeah.
myself for 2 weeks before well, my husband at the time would have known I was gone. But the whole point is I almost didn't take it. And it was one of life's biggest teaching moments for me, that and palliative care. And I've actually looked into, I would love to train, I really don't care for the name, a death doula, helping people, you would know this, but helping
Yes.
people transition, especially
Yeah.
when they've been given a palliative, a terminal diagnosis. So,
And it's yeah. And
go
it's
ahead.
funny as you speak about that, the death doula. Um,
Mhm.
I I am known also, Laura, as a spirit midwife. And yeah, a
Really?
spirit midwife. And
I
I'm
love
called to
it.
the bedside. And that name was given to me by spirit,
I love
because
it.
I'm a spirit midwife. Now I know it compares to the death doula,
Mhm.
but I only heard about death doula years afterwards.
I like the name spirit
Spirit
midwife
midwife.
because you are there to support the person,
Mm,
to help. We all go through a grieving process. It's called the 5 stages of death and dying, as you
yes.
probably know by Dr. Kubler-Ross, Elizabeth
Yeah.
Kubler-Ross. I always say it should be called the 5 stages of loss
Yeah.
because we go through those stages no matter what it is in life.
Yeah.
A loss of a
Absolutely.
relationship, a loss of a job, anything we go through that as human beings, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And like with loss of financial support,
Yes.
loss
Yes.
of a baby, a miscarriage,
Mhm.
all of these things are losses which
Mhm.
are not really acknowledged
Mhm.
and embraced, which they should be, because we go through the same grieving for them
Mhm.
as we do when we lose a loved one, only that it's deeper. This
I
is very deep.
I agree with you. The other thing is teaching my eldest. My youngest has severe autism, so it's a little hard to explain death to somebody that's sort of like at that precocious age of a 5 to 7 year old, but I do my best. But with my eldest, I think he had somebody who had lost their mother just recently, and he's run across death. He's
Yeah.
26, and I say to him, it's a beautiful thing when somebody passes in the way that you have all the support and the love and the friends and everything you need, the
Mhm.
family. I said, a good friend or somebody you care about, you're there when
Mm.
everybody else is gone, when reality starts to settle in a couple months later. And,
Absolutely.
every single time you talk to somebody that's grieving, and there is no timetable for grief, too, that's a
No,
misnomer people think, but
no.
to support them then. And if you don't know what to say, that's okay just to sit and listen, because people don't want to, everybody falls away, I find. They don't want to they're uncomfortable, right? They don't want to make somebody cry or speak about that person they've lost. And it's so
Mm.
important. It really, really
Yeah.
is, isn't it?
And the reality is as well, and it's funny, I've covered this in Whereafter,
Mm-hmm.
because, some people say the most inappropriate
They
things.
do.
They say the most inappropriate
Mm-hmm.
things, which are leave scars and
Mm-hmm.
wounds in the person that's
Yes.
grieving. And then I have another section in what to actually say, or else
I
say,
love that.
yeah, or else say nothing at all, just
Mm-hmm.
a hand on the shoulder, a hug, just I'm here. I have no words, but I'm here for you.
Or
You
what
know,
do you need? Or how can I
yes,
help? Or
absolutely.
anything like that, because people grow up with cliches like everything's
Yeah.
going to be fine, it's fine, everything will be fine, and
The Lord
just
doesn't give you a cross that you can't
can't
carry.
bear. Yes.
You're
Yes.
young, you can have another baby.
Yes. Yes.
The pain will go. You will get over this.
It
I
was
mean,
just a
it's
dog, it was just a pet,
yes.
whatever it is, they don't, until, I always say, somebody's experienced something in
Yeah,
their own bubble of life.
yeah,
And I understand why there's so much. If human beings couldn't filter everything out and have
yeah,
to experience everything, but to be able to have empathy and compassion for another human being, to try to understand, even maybe there are people that have never really experienced a serious loss,
mm,
but most of us, I believe, are empathic and compassionate, that we could imagine even what that would feel like. And somebody's lost something in their life,
yeah,
whether it's a human being or a pet, or like we
yes.
were talked about earlier, right?
But it's
Mhm.
funny you say that, Laura, because one of my she's a beautiful, beautiful.
Mhm.
She is. I still say she is,
Mhm.
because she has made her transition. But
Mhm.
she had asked me. Uh, she had been diagnosed very, very suddenly with bowel cancer, and she
Mhm.
had said to me, Mariel, you will be here with me when my time comes, because of the spirit midwife. And
Mhm.
I said, well, Yvette, the soul chooses who's going to be there.
Yes.
And if it's meant to be, I shall be there.
Mhm.
And I said, we will pray for that. Excuse
Mhm.
me. But I said, the soul will always choose who's to be around the bedside,
Mhm.
or the who is to be there and who's not to be there for particular reasons. Because when the
Mhm.
soul is transitioning and leaving the body, it takes energy, and sometimes somebody's energy can make it harder for the soul to rise
Oh,
up
how
and
many
detach.
times have I
Yes,
seen
yeah,
that? Or
absolutely.
the
Please don't
conversation.
go. How will we live without you? Which
Mhm.
is, it's not selfish, but it's just grief. It's
Mhm.
on the onset of grief talking. But my
Mhm.
friend Yvette, as it happened, I was there for the last 3 days of her life. But
Oh,
ironically enough, her husband, who was 68, had never experienced the loss of anyone.
wow.
I could not believe this. Never ever experienced
How
the loss.
devastating for him.
Unbelievable. And his wife was the first person he had ever witnessed
Oh.
dying. going through
Wow.
the well, as I call the dying process. And you know, getting back to the spirit midwife, Yvette, for Yvette, it was like and I have asked my guides, I have many guides, bless them, and I said, where did this spirit midwife come? And they told me that 500 years ago, one
Hmm.
of my past lives in England, I was
Hmm.
a nun in a nunnery. And
Oh,
the reason I was put into the nunnery was because at that time in England, anyone that was born, any child that was born gifted,
excuse
was
me.
either persecuted or burnt at the stake if the gifts
Oh,
grew with them. So my family, in order to protect me, and they had money apparently, they didn't have it in this lifetime though, but they put me into a nunnery for safekeeping.
okay.
So there, that is where. So I used to hand them. I was shown, and I was told I used to hand them through the veil into the world, into the afterlife
Oh,
world,
how beautiful.
and that's how spirit midwife has came back in this lifetime.
Hmm.
And I have sat like you, Lorilei, at the bedside of so many making that transition, and
Hmm.
it is a very sacred and it is a very precious
Very.
and humbling time.
That's what I always say. I've been
It is.
deeply humbled to have
Yes.
families that have chosen, their loved one chooses to pass at home.
Yes.
And, I would go out in the middle of the night. I'd go at I never got paid, but,
Yeah.
I'd be
Like
working
me.
full
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
But even as a nurse capacity,
Hmm.
you work with these families for months, and it's scary if, you don't know what to expect when someone's
Yeah.
going to pass physically. But I am writing a book about this. I'm writing 3 books, but one of them I'm writing about, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is I call it the gift. And not everybody gets this gift, but I find especially people that have been terminal for a while,
Mhm.
they're in the end stages, they are. You see the physical signs,
Yes.
and they're comatose. And this is where I've also found where culture really comes into play, because a lot of culture food is love. And they think, why they're not eating, they're not put an IV and put something, and they would end up drowning in their own
Yeah.
fluids. That's the most compassionate thing to do, is the body shuts down. But
Yes.
all of a sudden, they wake up. Might be for 2 minutes, might be for 5 minutes, might be for 8 hours. And
Mhm.
it's like they were before they got ill. They're able to have those conversations, whatever it may be. It's really difficult when it's a longer period for a couple hours, because then people start believing maybe it's a miracle. It's a miracle healing. It's what have you.
Yeah.
But again, I think that that's part of the role as a spirit midwife, right? Is to help people understand that this is a gift. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, if you've experienced
Yeah.
this yourself,
Oh,
or.
I like that, Lorley. I have been blessed to see
Mhm,
so much phenomena at the
mhm.
bedside of the
Oh, I
person.
know. Mhm,
Incredible. Well,
mhm,
it's funny enough, one of my very first introductions into the hospice, it was a new hospice in our city here.
mhm,
And this lady, she was only 42, beautiful, beautiful soul. And when she was no longer able to come to me, I would go to her home.
mhm,
And she had apparently said to her sister, if anything should happen to me suddenly, because her condition was very critical through cancer,
mhm.
if anything happens to me, make sure you contact Marielle, because I want her. Because I do the shamanic shutting down of the chakras as well.
Oh,
Because I
wow. Okay.
trained as a shaman as well. I've been soul
And
searching
I
for a
didn't
long
add that
time.
in your bio. I knew there was things I missed. I'm so
No,
sorry.
you didn't. No, that's the ego talking. We leave the ego parked
No, but that's
outside.
important to hear that. That's important
But
to hear that.
so I my first introduction to go into the hospice, because it was like no man's land. I walked in through those doors,
Mhm,
and the lady behind the reception, I explained I was here on behalf of such a family,
mhm,
and she says, "Oh, you better wait there now. Oh, you better wait there now. The matron wants to. She knows you're coming," and it was like, okay, she knows you're coming.
mhm,
So, matron, anyway, I hear these shoes click clack, this heavy footsteps coming down the corridor, and it was thundering down the corridor,
Yeah.
and I went, oh my God, is
Yes.
this an avalanche? What's going?
Uh-huh.
I just knew. I smelt it. I smelt that there was an
Mhm,
avalanche coming, a
mhm,
barrage. And she said, "And you are?" And I said, "I am Mariel. I'm here on behalf
Hmm.
of the family."
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, you're the one they call an angel." And I said, "Oh no, don't worry about that tonight." I said, "I left the wings in the car." You know, it didn't. It went down like a lead balloon. Not great taste at all. And she said, "What are you going to do to her? Are you going to hurt her? This was, yeah. Are you going to touch her? Are
Oh.
you going to do the?" And luckily enough, I said, "Look," I said, "I am here." I said,
Mhm.
her sister is here," and I said, "I will invite you into that sacred space, into that room
Mhm.
with me."
Because it
But
is sacred.
it is sacred, and I was
Mhm.
going to make it even more sacred. Well,
Mhm.
not me, but my
Yeah.
guides. But the ironic thing about it is, when I walked into that room, Lorilei, I did not expect. I had an audience. I had her mom, her dad, her
Oh,
son, her
wow.
sister, her ex-husband, her brother, her grandmother, and 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 the I always I speak from the spirit, and I introduced myself as well, and that I knew beautiful Miriam, and then the brother says, "Oh, for God's sake, I'm not into this. I won't say what he said online, but you know." And he said, "Yeah, you shouldn't even be here." So I had to start holding a sacred space and creating a sacred space, knowing I was not wanted by some members of the family. And that is very hard. So, what I did in that instance, I asked my angel to connect with his angels so that there would be a place of understanding and compassion and love between us
Mhm.
until I did what I was guided to do by Miriam's soul. So that was fine. And like that, she had been unconscious for 2.5 days.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
while I was uncoiling or recoiling, should I say, the chakras, and because
Mhm.
when you recoil the chakra system, it helps the spirit body to rise up without any attachments to the physical
Oh,
body. Yeah.
beautiful.
And it's so beautiful. And I always have to get permission from the soul,
Of
because
course. Mhm.
cannot do it. It's not my soul. I have to seek permission, and it's 99 times granted. There are some times it's not, because the soul is not ready.
I hear you. Mhm.
Yeah. So it was so beautiful. But Miriam, all of a sudden, for a lady that was in a coma for 2.5 days, she just rose up
Yeah.
in the bed,
Mhm.
reached out her hands to, like as if to the wall, and smiled and kept reaching and reaching,
Wow.
opening her arms to be received, and the
Mhm.
smile on her face. And she very gently lay back and was still kind of conscious. And that's when I said to each of the family, I said, "Now is the time to go and whisper in her ear," because I said her hearing is sharpened at this stage. So
Mhm.
to say whatever you need to say. So I gently took a space over in the corner. And then after a while, when I had um, involved all the family in joining hands, and we created a beautiful circle of light around her
Mhm.
bed.
Oh, what a
Yeah,
beautiful ceremony.
beautiful, a beautiful circle of light, fabulous. And the ironic thing about it is, Lorilei, I had 100,000 angels, and the last visit I had to her home, I said, You're going to love this CD." I said, "I'll bring it the next time." Little did I realize the next time was when I was playing it, when she was about
Oh,
to make her transition. So I left that plane as I walked out of the room. So I blessed all of them as I blessed Miriam from the crown, and left. And as I was going down the corridor, next thing I heard, "Marielle, wait up, wait up," this man's voice. And I went, "Oh
oh,
God, I'm in trouble again." The
yeah.
same guy.
Mhm.
And the tears was rolling down his face, and he put
Oh.
his arms on my shoulders, and he said, "I'm sorry." And I said,
Oh.
"Not at all, not." And I said, "What are you sorry for?" He said, "The way there was a word he used, and I can't remember, but the way I kind of gave out to you, the way I resented you." And he said, "Something happened in there." He said, "Something," he said, "that
Mhm.
I have never seen before."
Mhm.
But he said, "I know something did, So he was so excited, and even amidst his tears, he it did something for him. So his sister's final parting activated some story in him that he pursued later. You know,
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, and like I have another story, Lorilei, about my friend and her beautiful 12-year-old daughter, beautiful Lucy, and Lucy was she had been 9 and she was diagnosed with a very rare form of leukemia,
Oh.
and she had bone marrow transplant, which was very, very successful. And then at 12, all of a sudden, she wasn't feeling well one day, and with that, back into hospital, and she was given about 6 weeks. Now, my friend, of course, she was devastated. It was her only child, and she was at this stage separated, divorced. And while I was holding vigil with the mom, with my friend, Lucy wakes up after being in and out of consciousness. And she reached out and she grabbed her mom's hand and she said, "Oh, mommy," she said, "you don't have to be sad for me anymore."
Mhm.
She said, "What?" She thought she was being delusional, you
They
know?
always do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And she said, "Oh, mommy," she said, "I'm after being playing with Peter.
Hmm.
And Peter has said that you are not to be sad anymore and that he's going to take special care of me."
Hmm.
And she said, "Oh, mommy, I can't wait to go home and play with him,"
Yeah.
right? That was the last words Lucy ever spoke to her mum. But what the mum had never told Lucy was Lucy had a brother named Peter, and he had died 3 years before she was born. So, wasn't that a beautiful story for the mum to realize that the afterlife is there? Peter is there, and he's waiting to bring his sister home.
Oh my goodness. Everybody that's watching is loving this. Michelle Pratt is watching from Australia. And Effie said, I am loving this beautiful conversation. Thank you for sharing. And you know what? You are so, and Michelle just said, oh, wow. And it's true. I'm going to share a quick story because my book that I'm writing about
Yes.
mostly nurses, but first responders are people in the medical field. And who knows, maybe what I'll write it for those of us that are doing, I'm not working actively in that field now, but that's my wish to start doing that. But some of the stuff you're sharing reminds me that things that we've seen.
Yeah.
And there was a story. I happened to be out at Dell's camp, and one of his friends, I'd never met his second wife, and she's a nurse. And I was talking to her, about the book and a whole bunch of stuff. And her mom is a nurse, and her mother used to work on pediatrics. And we have a large First Nations Indigenous population here. And there was a little one. He was about 4, I guess, at the time. This is many years ago. And his family couldn't be there with him. And all the nurses, we always fall in love with the little ones like that. In the NICU, somebody be put up for adoption, or in the nursery, we'd all be carrying that little one and loving them like our own, in a baby
Yeah.
carrier until they went to their
Mm.
family.
Yeah.
Anyways, this little one, all the nurses just loved him, and he passed away very sadly, and they weren't expecting it. And then the floor was very, very, very busy, and of course they covered him and treated him with respect, of course, but they needed time to prepare the body to send it to the morgue. Well, they got busy, and as nurses are, and everybody in the hospital running their feet off. Well, the call bell kept going off in that room, and there was nobody in there except the little one. And this little boy, I think it was a little boy, he had passed. All of a sudden, this girl relayed to me that her mother remembered, oh my goodness, his family had told us their belief with their culture was that once they pass, you need to open the window to allow the spirit to return to, they call it the Great Spirit.
The great spirit.
And so when she went back to the room, and I think the call bell had gone off like 6 times, she opened the window and the call bell stopped ringing. So,
Oh yeah, and it's amazing. It's amazing in other indigenous countries,
mhm.
cultures as well. That if you know how the grandfather, the grandmother, who are the wise shaman, they would have the family around, and what would happen there is the guy that I studied shamanism with, he was Dr. Alberto Valido,
Mhm.
and he was from an indigenous
I
tribe.
think I've heard his name before. Mhm.
Shaman, Healer, and
Mhm.
Sage is
Mhm.
his was his first book. An amazing guy,
Mhm.
and I was very blessed to study under him. But he was explaining in even he remembered it even as a child in these teepee tents, and
Right.
when somebody was about to make their transition,
Mhm.
that the elder would kiss the youngest in the group, and
Ah.
that kiss would be passed around from mouth to mouth to mouth to mouth. And eventually, the older son, if there was
Mhm.
an older son, would kiss the grandmother or the
Mhm.
grandfather or the mother or father who was about to make their transition.
Okay.
And that kiss was sucked with the last breath, and the
Oh.
window was open, and it was
Okay.
blown out into the universe where
Oh.
the spirit was
Okay.
free, right?
That is
Yeah. So there
beautiful.
is there is lovely cultures. There's lovely tributes and ways of honoring the transitioning soul, and I think that is so beautiful to have those traditions.
I do too, and I want to share this because I want to hear. I know that you're going to share something beautiful with the person that left this comment. Because all I'm going to say is everything happens the way it's meant to happen. But Michelle Pratt says I was with my dad when he passed, and I wished I knew more about this when it happened. Right?
Right.
So, what are your thoughts? My thoughts were everything happens as it was meant to happen. So, just because maybe you didn't have someone like Marielle there, right?
Oh yeah.
It passed. Your father passed in the way that his soul would have been meant to pass, right, Marielle? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And Michelle, it is a great honor, and maybe now that you will see it, that it was a gift that you gave to him, because he was able to leave his body. The soul was able
Mm-hmm.
to leave his body because it was you that was in the car. Had it been somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
your mom or your sister, or your brother, it would not have been
Like
an
in the room,
easier,
yeah.
yes. It would not, because the soul chooses who's to be there. And oftentimes I'm sure you've seen it yourself, Lorilei, that, somebody can be for weeks and weeks and weeks, in that kind of coma, semi-coma, deep coma state,
Mm-hmm.
and that they are really teetering on between the two
Yeah.
worlds for a
Between
long, long time,
because they
between the
can
two worlds.
leave, right? They can leave.
Yeah.
Like my
Yes.
father is dying right now.
Yes. Oh,
And
bless.
it's okay. I'm not on speaking terms. And the reason
Okay.
why, not from a place of revenge or anger, it's just when you know that maybe you can only control what you do,
Mm.
not what other people do. I would be doing what I'm doing. And my
Hmm.
father's visited me quite a few times in dreams recently, and
Okay.
we've had many a conversation. Excuse me, I'm going to grab a Kleenex. Could you explain maybe a little bit about that, how our loved ones visit us
Oh,
when they're
yes.
transitioning? I'll be right back. It'll take me two
Okay.
seconds.
And
I've been in tears and now I need a Kleenex. But please go ahead, Mary. I'll be two
bless you.
seconds.
Bless
Thank
you.
you.
So when our loved ones, it's not just that that there is after death communication, which we'll probably talk about later with Laura Lee, but before our loved ones make that transition, the room is filled. I have seen, it's like the curtains open and the spirit world steps in, and loved ones
There we
that
go.
have
Sorry
gone
about that.
before us, loved ones that have gone before
Hmm.
us, they are there to
Yeah.
escort their family member
Hmm.
across to the other side. And I
Hmm.
suppose it's so important at this stage too to say that anybody who has lost a loved one and they haven't been there, and they felt, oh my God, that he died alone, she died alone,
Hmm.
I have been so reassured by spirit, and I have seen it
Me too.
myself.
Hmm.
Nobody dies alone. Our loved ones that have gone before us and made that journey across the other side, they're always there. They help them.
Yeah.
They actually lead them out of the physical form and
Hmm.
bring them into the afterlife. And there are many angels, and in particular, if they were religious, now everyone transitions to the afterlife,
Hmm.
irregardless or irrespective of race, creed, religion, or no religion. Every
Hmm.
single person
Yes.
enters the afterlife.
I call it
And
going back home.
yes, and it is going back home.
Yes.
So, I mean, nobody does die alone. And you were going
No.
to say something there, Laura Lee, were
What
you,
I
when
was
I was saying
going
that?
to say is that what I assure people of, because you see this many times, and even people I know well, that they weren't there when somebody they loved passed, and there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of
Oh yeah.
sadness. And what I truly believe is that the soul knew for whatever reason that was the right time to go when they weren't
Yeah.
there. For
Yeah.
maybe the memories it was going to leave, or like you said, the type of energy that might have been, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
that was decided long before we even ascend into the, or or born into this lifetime. I agree, I believe.
It is all
So
yeah, it's all
yeah.
preordained.
Hmm.
And another instance for where that happened is another friend of mine, bless her, she sat
Hmm.
with her daughter. She was an older daughter at her bedside.
Hmm.
And but she spent weeks and weeks and weeks there. My friend used to say to her daughter, and I used to try and advise, no, you know, this is hard on your daughter who is trying to get into the phase of transitioning. And she'd say, "Oh, what'll I do without you? Please don't leave me. Please
Hmm.
don't leave me." And after about 5 weeks, the daughter, what she was, like you said earlier, she was in very high spirits.
Hmm.
She had kind of turned the corner again. She was happy. She was talking. She sat up. She had a drink of juice. And she said to the mom, "Mom, will you please go home and have a shower and have a rest?"
Hmm.
And the mom was just after sticking the key in her door when her phone rings, and it was the hospital to say her daughter had just passed. And the
Hmm.
reason, as I explained to her much
Yes.
later, the soul, it takes energy for the soul to rise up and to
Hmm.
leave the body. Only on different things then, when it's a slow process, but then with accidents or drowning or
Hmm.
fire or tsunamis, the soul exits the body at the point of impact. That's a different
Hmm.
story. We can talk about that
I
again if
would
you wish.
love to, because you know what, I talk about this quite a bit. And there was a really great series put out by the UK a few years ago, starting to normalize discussion about death,
Hmm.
because none of us leave this world alive. We all can be assured that we're going to
Yeah.
leave, and to make it a normal part of life. And I think it's so important to have conversations like this for people to realize exactly what you said. And I've looked at many, 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 many stories and talk. I've had patients that have had a cardiac arrest in front of me, have been
Mhm.
resuscitated. And I think maybe because I worked nights, I was really
Yeah.
grateful to have that conversation. And
Mhm.
you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that they were on that ceiling. They
Yeah.
were floating around, because the things they told you, there was no way they could have known. And Michelle, I
Yes.
want to say this to your comment here. I'm going to read some of them, if that's okay, Marielle. She
Okay.
says, this is the one with her father that passed, that she wished she had known the information. She said, interesting, my two sisters were both there. The oldest got up and went out. That's when my father went. My middle sister went running to get my elder sister. I stayed with him, but this is the comment I wanted to talk about. She said my big sister made it known to dad she wanted to be there when he went. Sorry, it's the next one. Sadly, I feel she helped him leave this place quicker. Now, the one thing I was going to say to that, Michelle, and I might have misunderstood that maybe quicker from the sad face, it looks like it may be that you felt that he left sooner than maybe he was meant to. We leave when the time is, regardless of what the
Yeah.
certain, somebody can't, I mean, yes, by their own hand, I guess they can make
Mm.
you leave quicker, but
Yeah.
when the soul is meant to leave is when it leaves. Right, Marielle? Is that what you're
Absolutely.
experiencing?
The soul chooses its coming and it chooses its going.
Yes,
And
yes.
even if you were to take the analogy of somebody that's pregnant, their due date may be the 12th of December,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
all of a sudden here we are, and it's nearly the 20th of
Yeah.
December, and the baby still hasn't come.
Hmm.
Or then the baby was due the 12th of December and it came the end of November.
Hmm.
So the soul chooses, and
Yes,
the soul chooses its timing astrologically as
yes.
well as divine timing,
Hmm.
because it comes in on certain star signs. It comes in when the sun, the moon, and the stars are aligned, and it also exits at the same time. And that's why the astrological chart, as you would know, is so important as well. when we're
That's who
doing
had
any
the
work.
question for you. Dave Petrella, who was on here with me. He's an astrologist. He's become a good friend. And he wasn't able to be here. He's here every week. And he asked me, he said, please ask her this question. He wanted to know what your thoughts are about the soul's silver cord, what happens when we pass, and so on and so forth. So I said, yes, Dave, I will remember. He'll be watching this after. So,
Hello, Steve. Hello, my dear. Okay, the silver cord.
mhm,
So, silver cord is something that is not spoken about a lot, but
mhm,
everyone will know about the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord is what
mhm.
keeps the baby fed and nourished.
Yep,
It's the lifeline
yep.
while baby is in mother's womb.
Mhm,
And then when birth happens, that umbilical cord is cut and mother and baby become individual,
mhm.
separate from each other. But we still have a silver cord, and that silver cord connects us to our spiritual home on the other side. That cord is like it's like a tube.
Mhm.
It's like, for the want of a better word, it's like a lifeline.
Yes,
And when we have outer body experiences, and we all have outer body
yes.
experiences, right?
Mhm,
And some people can, everybody dreams, every single one of us dreams, and we astral travel, or other might call it
exactly.
astral projection,
Yeah.
but not everybody has recall of it.
Mhm,
But when you have, say, a visitation, I'll go back to the silver cord. When you have a visitation from your loved one,
mhm,
which is where you remember seeing them, and that you're talking to them and you're having a full blown conversation,
mhm.
and you wake up in the morning and you say, "Oh my God, it was like as if I was talking to my mother. It's like as if I was talking to my
You were?
husband." You actually were.
Yes.
And that was their way of reassuring you that
Mhm,
they are on the other side. They were still overlighting you. They're looking after you. They have only left physically. Their spirit,
mhm,
their soul resides on the other side.
mhm.
And the outer body experiences is when we are dreaming. We not just dreaming, but we go into the inner planes. We go there at nighttime. The soul leaves the body.
Yes.
It at will. It travels
Mhm,
outwards. It goes to its schools of learning. It goes to the halls of wisdom. It would get very bored sitting inside in our bodies
but we're
if
sleeping.
we were when we're sleeping.
Mm,
It has other things to do. So it travels outward. It goes
mhm,
into the inner planes for whatever it needs to. It might even need recharging. It might need resustenance. It might need rebooting. So it travels. And then in the morning, when it's time, say, for the body to wake up,
mhm.
sometimes you might feel your body jerking,
Yes.
and you're
You
not
just snap back
yeah,
in.
you jerk. And that's when the soul has just gone into the body before you woke up. And
Mhm,
that's called catalepsy. And it's a known phenomenon as well. But
mhm,
that silver cord is the one. And like when I had my death experience and I could see myself, I was above I was spiritually looking down at my physical body.
mhm,
But there was that cord, but I did not give it too much attention. But I was there. It was like there was two of me. There
mhm.
was the
Yeah.
physical, and there was the transparent part of me that was above the ceiling and then
Mhm,
out through it. And that's the silver cord. And it is limitless.
mhm,
But it is the lifeline that nourishes us while we're here on earth. So when we are about to transition,
yes.
the only time the silver cord snaps or breaks or disengages,
Mhm.
that is at the moment of physical death. And when
Okay.
it disengages, that's the point of no return.
Mhm.
Whereas with the near death experience, the silver cord, we're brought back to life and the silver cord is still intact. I hope that
I
answers your
no,
friend.
I appreciate that. You know what I think may give people a lot of peace, and I've had many personal conversations about this, is when somebody dies a very horrific death that you think that, oh my God, they must have
Yeah.
suffered, and the things that we create, believe it or
Mm-hmm.
not, Dell. I've had many conversations with him because he wasn't there when his father passed, and it was unexpected and it was very sudden. And I think he imagined things because we do from hearing other people's accounts versus what really happened. And you
Mhm.
mentioned it briefly that we really disengage unless that pain, as I understand it, is very rare, has been built into our plan, if you will, for this lifetime, that there's something to be learned from it. People don't
Yeah.
experience that pain
Yeah.
upon the death, right?
No, well, I'm going by, and this is a very relevant question, and it's
Hmm.
very pertinent to many, many people,
Hmm.
because the last thing we want is to see our loved ones suffering. The last, and that's why
Absolutely.
palliative care is so important and it is so
Yes.
good.
Hmm.
And that is, it is important that our loved ones can pass on with dignity and
Hmm.
compassion and without
I agree.
pain,
I
but
agree.
also without fear. That's another topic we can discuss, without fear.
I'm gonna
But
have to have you back. I know I am.
without fear, because fear is huge, is paralyzing. But to get back to the trauma of somebody in pain, seeing somebody pain, and especially for sudden deaths, like soon anybody caught up in tsunamis, anyone caught up, say, like, bless all who perished in the 9/11. 9/11 was a horrendous global atrocity, which will be down in the annals of history for a long, long time. But bless
Mhm.
all those souls. They made a collective soul decision before they ever came on earth to be
Mhm.
there at that time.
Mhm.
It was preordained, pre-planned,
Yeah.
predestined. And they brought a lot of the dross, the heavy darkness that still resides on the earth at this moment in time. Their souls, they did a huge service to
They sure
humanity.
did. They were on
They
the
did.
verge of civil war, I believe, in
Yes,
the US. And I've had
absolutely.
this conversation with Joe Montaldo. I usually give him a shout out, Joe Montaldo, the owner of UPRN, usually produces this, not so much anymore. We're getting good at doing it on our own,
Yeah.
but we still do a paranormal discussion group, usually on Mondays. We didn't get a chance today. He's been pretty busy with his day job. He runs a construction company. I don't know how he
Great.
does it. Then he runs
Yeah.
the station all night long. But he's had this conversation
He's
with us.
40% Irish. That's how he can
That's
do
what
it.
it is. No, but we've had this conversation where he'll ask the question about, say, for supposedly so many people that have passed during what we've been going through the last 2 years, and being
Okay.
careful since we're on YouTube. And I've shared, and again, I don't know everything, but I've tried to explain that this was planned. They knew. It's not like it
Mhm.
was unexpected that we lost all these people. Now we've got these lost wandering souls everywhere. That can happen. That's another
Mm.
discussion, right? But
Yeah, another
again,
discussion. Yeah.
like 9/11, like
Yeah.
you said, for whatever
Yeah,
reason,
and
collectively.
the big tsunami of 2004
Oh,
as well.
I
All of those, and like the New Orleans flooding going
Mhm.
back as well, all of those, because with New Orleans
Mhm.
there was such discrimination between black and white,
Mhm.
and the music was gone from the land. So, all their jazz
And
music.
Joe says no, not now. Like it's beautiful between,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
But then you
Mhm.
see that
Mhm.
flooding had to happen
Mhm.
so that that darkness was lifted. There was
Cleansed.
a
Mhm.
cleansing on that place.
Mhm.
And that's so important. And I know it's very cold comfort to anybody that would have lost anybody through tragic circumstances like tsunamis, like fires, like 9/11, like
So the body may experience
drownings.
physical pain, but the soul, like it's a little hard to explain, right? But the soul, at the moment it passes, like you don't experience maybe what the physical body had
No,
experienced, correct?
absolutely. And this
Mhm.
is what I have been told time and time again by my
Mhm.
guides, because this is a question
Mhm.
that I've been asked all the time.
Mhm.
Did my loved one feel the pain? Did my loved one who was burnt in a fire, or
Mhm.
the burning, and did they feel it? And I
Mhm.
am reassured time and time again
Mhm.
that when it's a tragedy like that, a car accident, a
Mhm.
drowning, a fire, a tsunami, whatever, the soul leaves the body at that point of impact.
Mhm.
So the body does not feel the pain.
Mhm.
The soul, which is the engine, the consciousness, the driving force of the physical body,
Mhm.
is gone. So it doesn't feel the pain. There is a moment where the soul just exits. And the
Mhm.
moment it exits, at that point of impact, the pain I am reassured, is not felt in the physical body.
I have also seen, and I've talked with other mediums and people that work in this field like we do, that depend, and again, it just depends. Every individual here that is, we've got a question too, that is here has a different experience. We're here to learn and to grow. But I've seen it myself where it's almost like the soul has left, but the human shell of the body is still there, maybe for a couple more days. Have you seen that yourself at all?
Not so. I always know when the soul has gone, and
You did know.
it's an empty vessel. It's an
Hmm.
empty shell,
Yeah. Hmm.
and it's now sometimes the
Doesn't
soul
happen very often, but
it doesn't, but sometimes the soul can
hmm.
loom around
Hmm.
its physical shell, which
Hmm.
housed its soul,
Hmm.
for a period of time. It
Hmm.
can, especially if the family are very grief stricken,
Hmm.
it can loom around, and
Hmm.
it can help kind of in the grieving process
Hmm.
for the family
I've
or the
seen that.
loved
Yeah.
ones. Yeah. So the soul is and like going back to Socrates and Plato and Aristotle,
Hmm.
the soul, to all of them, and each in their own centuries, they agreed on one thing, even though they were centuries apart, that the soul was the most magnificent and divine part of the human psychic. So they agreed on all that. And then later on, Descartes, Swedenborg talked and wrote
Hmm.
much about the
Hmm.
soul. So the soul is who we are. We
Not the body, not the
Not the
body.
body,
Nope, not
not the
even close.
body.
Nope.
No,
Mm-mm.
not the body. The body is just the vehicle that
Hmm.
houses our soul.
That's how
It's
I try and
yeah,
explain it. And the brain is basically like a computer because
yeah,
I call it the higher self, depending who you have, they'll call it the subconscious or whatever. But we know all the answers. We do. We've lived thousands and thousands of lives. That's the other
yeah,
thing. We never, ever end. Now,
yeah.
we do have,
We're immortal. We're
mhm.
immortal.
Isn't that a beautiful thing? We're
Yeah,
immortal.
but we were talking earlier, Lorilei, about having pain relief and having a
Hmm.
person be comfortable and die with
Hmm.
dignity. But
Yes.
the biggest pain, I believe, because I have witnessed it time and time and time again for years, the biggest pain is the fear of death, the
Oh,
fear of
absolutely.
dying. That is the most painful of all.
Hmm.
Now, and it doesn't. I do find that people that have some kind of a religious belief or some kind of follow a
Hmm.
particular faith path, that they find it easier to surrender,
Hmm.
whereas those that have of no faith, they struggle, they resist, they're terrified to let
Hmm.
go for fear, out
Yep.
of fear. And that's why when I see people that it takes them a good while to leave the earth plane, for the soul to leave, that's where I come in and do my shamanic blessing and healing and releasing of the
Okay, so
soul.
I have a question for you then. And I always say, I might have told you that the first night we met, that Dell and I went through extremely evil paranormal story. It's quite a previous home, but I don't look back in anger or anything like that because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. But what I have encountered as a medium are those that maybe don't realize that they passed. They passed very quickly, very tragically, or they're earthbound, whether it's due to fear, like you said, for say somebody's committed suicide, and the religious persecution they believe may await them, or some people they just it's materialism, could be revenge, could be whatever. How do those souls pass? Because I know eventually they do. Everybody finally realizes that, hey, I don't need to hang around here.
That could take forever to answer that
Mhm.
in many different ways, but
Maybe we'll have to do a show on it.
it is so earthbound souls, because would you believe me when I say this? I used to call myself, well, for the want of a better word, a ghostbuster, and I used to be
We
called
have so
upon
much in common because
called upon to
I deal with the paranormal stuff too, from a light worker perspective or whatever
yeah.
you want to call it. Yeah.
And yes, some souls do get
Mm-hmm.
trapped between the two worlds. And those are the ones, as you said, rightly said, they don't believe that they are actually dead, because
Mhm.
they're still operating, they feel, in a physical form.
Mhm.
But they're in a state of kind of confusion.
Mhm.
That is why they don't see the light, they don't go to the light. And
Right.
sometimes, if there is a lot of the souls that I would have helped to go towards the light, a lot of them would have been, say, where there was a huge anger. There was
Oh,
anger,
yeah.
anger. And the energy of anger resides still with the etheric field.
Mhm.
And that's why it is so important that somebody is, like yourself or myself, called
Mhm.
to release the soul and to show them and turn them to the light.
Mhm.
In Ireland, we have, you may have remembered some of our history in relation to our famine going back into
Yes.
the mid
Mhm.
1800s.
Mhm.
And there was a time when I was called, it was a new housing estate,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of paranormal activity
Mhm.
going on in particular one house in this state.
Mhm.
And it was very funny in a way. The lady rang me and she says, well, my mother said you'll either phone Marielle or you'll phone the priest, so I decided I'd phone you. So I said, yeah, the priest, right? And so that's this happens all the time. But
Mhm.
so anyway, she decided to call me. But what I discovered, and you see, as you know, when you're doing a house clearing, you have to go to every room,
We
every
did talk
corner.
about this. I
Yeah,
remember after Del's show. Now, go ahead. This is an
yeah.
interesting story. Go ahead.
But
Sorry.
it
Mhm.
it was it was so it was you have to go to every room, every chimney, every
Mhm.
staircase, every
Mhm.
attic, every basement. It's a tough job when
Mhm.
when I'm doing it. Now I know there is an easier way to do it, by using the shamanic wheel and all of that, but I personally prefer to go in and be physically there and anchor the light, the grids of light, the
Yeah.
protective barriers around myself and around everybody in the house. So I am always drawn, and it was very strange. I was drawn up the stairs, and then there was this landing, and the piercing cold on that landing would you'd be put into a block of ice within seconds. It was that
Wow.
cold. It was palpable. But it eventually I discovered there was a little girl, and she was about 12 years of age, and her brother about 7. Two of them had fallen on the famine path on their way to the workhouse to get food. And they were lost souls, because the mom had died, the father had died, everybody had died belonged to them. So I was guided to call back their mother, call
Oh.
back their mother.
Mhm.
And the mother's energy came through.
Mhm.
And they didn't want to see the light, because they were so long wandering in this kind of trapped energy field
Mhm.
of being lost. And then eventually I asked the mother to place her 2 arms around her children,
Oh.
bring them into her heart. And then I asked, of course, Mother Mary to place her mantle around all
Mhm.
of them and
Mhm.
take them to the light. And there was an attic window,
Oh.
and I opened that, and the energy surge that it actually nearly threw me
Yeah.
when it
Mhm.
was incredible. So there are, but it's not every. It's I wouldn't like to frighten anybody. These people are confused. Yes, there is
Mhm.
very dark energy as well out there.
That's what we ran into.
Yeah,
We never found out why.
yeah,
I had a dream very quickly that happened about 16 years ago. And to make a long story short, there was a man in the tree in my front yard, and he identified himself as something starting with a D and IC
mm,
at the end of it. We'll call it. I don't,
yeah.
and I'm not afraid of it for anybody. I just choose not to share my
Give
energy with
energy
something
with
like
it.
that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and proceeded to try to offer me. I had started a little crafting business at the time, and everywhere I went around the city, people wanted to carry my merchandise, but they didn't want any compensation. And I remember saying to my ex husband at the time, this is crazy. Like, who sells somebody's merchandise and doesn't want a piece of it? Like, this is what a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And we had just watched the movie The Secret. I remember my ex-husband saying, well, maybe it's The Secret. Well, don't I have that dream that night? So it started out with, well, you see that little business of yours. I can give you wealth. I can give you fame. I can give you anything among your wildest dreams. All you have to do is agree to follow me. And I can't say on the radio what I told this man to do, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously was not agreeing to follow him in no uncertain terms. And then proceeded to identify himself, give me the name, give me the spelling, and asked me again. And I told him even more emphatically where
Mm.
to go. And it wasn't that I was following him. And then he got very sarcastic with me and was wagging his finger, going, oh, no, 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 and proceeded to tell me the animal form it would be taking. And every time I saw the animal form, I would know who it was. And I called on Archangel Michael in the
Mm-hmm.
dream. And this does not describe the colors. I know you will get it, but this brilliant royal blue and silver and white, just
Mm.
this brilliant flash. And I woke up. I've got goosebumps telling you.
Yeah.
And I was in a sweat. I was shaking and I was crying. And I'm not a crier very easily. We did go through literal hell in that house. But I don't look back on it in anger or anything because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But long story short, and again, being raised Catholic,
Mm.
and I'm called the Angel Rock. We've talked many times on this show about it because of connection to angels and crystals and love
Mm.
rock music. Um, but wouldn't you know, about 4 or 5 years ago, somebody contacted me and had been given a name in a dream and asked me to do some research. What do I find? The exact spelling, the
Yeah.
exact name, and the exact animal form I had been given.
Wow.
Crazy story, but then
Yeah.
again, there were things to be learned from it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I suppose, Lorilei, for anyone that's listening as well tonight,
Hmm.
so important that that they realize that there is yin and yang, there is positive
Thank
and
you. Yep.
negative,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
So it's
It
so
has to
important.
be. It has to
There
be.
is, that's the balance, and that's the law of the universe,
Hmm.
and we operate,
That's right.
under kind of our bodies. There is spiritual laws, and we
Right.
have to
Hmm.
there is a law within the universe. That's the
That's right.
spiritual law. So as above, so below, as within, so without. So
But
it
it's
is so
nothing to
important.
fear. Nothing
Nothing to
to
fear.
fear. We have
But it's,
dominion
yeah,
and God and
yes.
mhm,
But it's so important, I suppose, Lorilei, for somebody that might be slightly a bit scary.
mhm.
It's so important that we can teach them that,
Agreed.
if
Mhm,
if you're anyway scared, if you live on your own, or if you
mhm,
feel that you're kind of vulnerable in any way, or if you don't even call on Archangel Michael, if you don't believe in
mhm,
Archangel Michael or any of the angels and spirit guides, just invoke, just visualize that you're placing a grid of protective golden light around you.
mhm,
You don't
mhm.
have to be religious, it works. You just say, I place this grid of protective light around me, and
Mhm.
I surrender to a higher power of love, light, and protection.
That's what I do. I actually have a couple of videos. I show them the most out of anything. And one is how to create a love shield. And the other
Yes,
one is grounding and grading because everybody's loved somebody in their life, right? And
yes,
I walk them through. I'm one of those people, I don't like to stick to steps because I find after I've watched something, I go, what was step number 6 again? So I kind of guide them on how to create their own. Like my
yes,
eldest, when he was younger, and we lived in the home, I was able to teach him, even my son with special needs. Now, my son with special needs never forgets. The one with autism, he calls it the bubble. Mommy, I put
yes.
the bubble up. He always remembers. My eldest finally shared with me when he was probably about 16 that for him, he imagines angel wings for him. But we
Right.
focus on love, right? And I walk people through that. We do have a question. Michelle wants to know, so what's going on now in this time, right now, with what's going on? Well, we were talking about the collective agreement of the group of
Mm.
souls, what they did with their sacrifice, well, not sacrifice, but agreement to all depart this earth at the same time. I think that's what she's asking. What's going on? Have you been given any information? Probably is what she's
Yeah.
saying. Hmm.
There is a big difference what's going on now, what was going on with a collective consciousness and a
Hmm.
group a group contract.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on now is a man-made globalistic
Mm-hmm.
warfare, I
Mm-hmm.
feel.
I
And
agree. Yep.
I'd rather not go into it,
I
but
think she meant with the souls too, like
with the
sort of
souls,
the souls. Yeah, that sort of.
with the souls that are exiting now,
Yes, yes,
you're
yes,
right.
yes. Hmm.
But like I said, I suppose earlier, no soul leaves the
I
earth
agree.
without its timing.
Hmm.
So even if it's part of this globalistic plan, the souls that are agreeing to leave are they're
Agreed.
they are in agreement with it.
Hmm. I agree. And I
Yeah,
didn't want to get into a lot of that
yeah, I
either
didn't
tonight, but
either.
I'm glad that she asked. I know Michelle. She's so
Mm.
beautiful. She's from Australia. Um, so Effie wants to know or mentioned, I have gone out of body during a trauma. She said her angels pulled her out to comfort her. Have you heard of that one before too? During a great trauma?
Yeah, and
Hmm.
and I can identify with that because when I was the after my death experience,
Hmm.
when about 3 months later, I just couldn't handle my life anymore
Hmm.
because it was even worse and more traumatic.
Oh.
So I decided I needed to leave this earth plane. And at about 2 o'clock in the morning, I was going out, leaving my home to end my life. I knew exactly where I was going. And
Hmm.
I knew I was going to drive into the city and
Hmm.
I was going to drive under the bridge. And then there was this huge water. The sea of the Atlantic was right in
Hmm.
front, but it had no protective barriers at that
Hmm.
time. It
Yeah.
has now. And I was going to put my foot on the accelerator, close my eyes, and
Yeah.
my pain would be over.
Hmm.
But I never gave thought to my three beautiful children,
Hmm.
babies that were down in their bedrooms. I just wanted to get rid of the
You want the
pain.
pain,
The
just like
pain.
anybody that's in
Yeah.
that situation.
So that's
Hmm.
why I can identify. That's why I do so much work with suicide and the prevention of suicide and
Hmm.
the aftermath of suicide. And
Hmm.
the reality is for me, then my that same hand, as I was going out the door, that
Hmm.
same hand that I saw in the afterlife presented itself onto the door, but my father lit up the whole doorway. My
Wow.
father, and he had just transitioned the year before. And he put out his hand again and he says, Molly a cudgeen, keep your powder dry. That's an Irish saying. In other words, don't get your ning nings in a twist.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
keep your powder dry.
Hmm.
So I knew it was about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden then here I am and I'm in my sitting room and I'm shaking and my teeth are chattering and I'm numb with cold. And there's 3 hours. I see the clock. It's nearly 5:10. And there's 3 hours that I have no recollection of. And
Wow.
my guides had taken my soul to restore it and my guides have told me to replace it with healing and with love. It was so traumatized that they needed to repair and restore my soul before I could thaw out to reality,
Hmm.
to what I was about to do. And after that, it was the next day I went and sought the advice of a lawyer, and the rest is history.
The
You know,
rest is
so
history.
that was the trauma. So
Hmm.
I was being saved the trauma by being taken out of my body, and that's what happens too with out of body experiences. You can
Hmm.
be taken out for
Hmm.
restoration, for healing.
Hmm.
So
And
what she said is correct. She was probably being restored. She was
hmm.
probably being refueled, recharged,
Hmm.
relined, rebalanced. All
I
of them.
love it. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about for people, because you don't, we've talked about you don't need to be religious to go transition back home or anything like that. But what about, I always say this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I always say to people, we all have angels, we all have guides. I said, whether you believe in them or not, they believe in you.
Yes.
So you have some very special ones. Are you comfortable with talking about them? Or
Oh,
how people can connect with their own even?
I
Hmm.
suppose I've been connecting with angels since I knew how to say my guardian angel prayer,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I mean, as I got older, then I studied all the angels and the archangels and the ascended
Hmm.
masters, spirit guides, and I'm actually qualified as an angel and ascension teacher as well.
Love it.
And it's just there is angels like that. Angels are non-denominational. That's the good news tonight. Angels are
Yes.
non-denominational.
Yep.
They have no religion. They are
Mhm.
there for mankind,
Yes.
and they are there to help us in our times of need. They're there to show us love. They're there to bring us healing. They're there to bring us protection. They're there to bring. Archangel Gabriel gives us guidance, and they provides the signpost to our soul. Archangel Michael, as you spoke about, if you believe in angels, you can invoke Archangel Michael and his cloak of protection around you. Archangel Raphael is the spiritual surgeon, and he heals the entire human physical body. He's wonderful. If you were to have surgery, you'd ask Archangel Raphael to guide the surgeon's hands during the surgery. So
My
that
son with
everything,
autism,
yeah.
if he knows, I just had a really nasty cold about a week and a half ago, and I get a sniffle, and he's always worried, Mommy, you're not going to die, are you? Like
Oh,
I said, he's
bless him.
5 years old. I know we have many a conversation. His middle name is Michael. Spirit told
Yeah.
me I would have 3 boys. I have 2, but Dell and I actually lost. I had a miscarriage very early on a few years ago. So, and
Yes.
I've had many tell me that's that third little boy around me. But this is like as a 3 or 4-year-old, and what their names would be. Now, my eldest is not called what I was told he would be called because my first husband wouldn't agree to it. But Justin, my middle one, has always been called Justin, or my youngest, I should say. It's not my
Yes.
middle.
Yes.
And they told me he would be called Justin Michael, and he is
Wow.
Justin Michael.
Michael.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's amazing. And they do
Mhm.
say
Mhm.
that the name
Mhm.
that the child needs is
Mhm.
downloaded to the mother right after birth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I knew he was named. I knew with
Yeah.
both my boys that I was having boys. I knew.
Mhm.
There's a story that my eldest knows very well. I used to go shopping with my father. My mother's birthday is December 15th, and their anniversary, New Year's Eve, and we had Christmas. So my
Oh,
father and I would make a trip out of it doing a shopping trip. And when I was pregnant with my eldest, so this is kind of 27 years ago, and just newly pregnant,
oh, you're only a baby.
no, but I knew I was having a boy. I just knew. I knew in my soul. And I remember I was out with my father, and my father had seen these, I guess, at one of the kiosks in the mall. I'm getting goosebumps telling you this. I don't know why. And it was gold wire. They could twist your name into a
Oh,
pin.
yes.
So he
Yes.
got one for me, and I remember him pinning this on my stomach. He was convinced I was having a girl, and her name would be Jillian. Well, obviously she wasn't Jillian, it was a Logan, but
Yeah.
I just gave that pin to my eldest son because he knows that story so well.
He deserves it. Yes.
Sorry, I got off track here with
No,
wanting to
but it's
talk about.
amazing. And we were
Mhm,
talking about Raphael because
mhm, yes.
of healing.
That's where I was
And
going. He knows
yeah,
every time anybody's sick, I'm gonna ask that
yeah.
archangel. He knows the name. He calls him Raphael. He'll say Raphael.
It's amazing. I mean, he's an incredible
Mhm,
ambassador for healing.
mhm.
Absolutely incredible.
Yes.
And then we have Archangel Shamuel, who works
Mhm.
with the heart, with the
Yes.
chakra, the heart center, and we
Mhm.
have Archangel Zadkiel,
Yes.
who works with the violet flame that we spoke about
Yes.
earlier. And the violet
Love it.
flame, for anybody that doesn't know about it, it is one of the most powerful
Yeah.
rays on the planet for the next
Mhm.
2,000 years. The
Yes.
violet, the violet flame was returned to humanity after the harmonic convergence of 1987.
Okay.
And the harmonic convergence was where, as you probably are aware, where all the spiritual people on the earth, they in the different parts of the world, in the
Mhm.
different sacred spaces, sacred sites, they prayed together for humanity. And the
Mhm.
violet flame, because of mankind's greed and power,
Mhm.
had been taken from the earth over
Mhm.
2,000 years ago. So
Wow.
it was brought back in
Mhm.
1987 for
Mhm.
mankind to use it for good this time. So if you're like that, a friend of mine was going into hospital last Tuesday night
Mhm.
for surgery on Wednesday. So I invoked the violet flame. You can send the violet flame. It dissolves, it transforms, it transmutes all negative energy
Yes.
into God light. And you can use it anywhere. You can use it on the street, you can use it in the post office, you can use it in the toilet, you can use it anywhere. I always send it into a hospital when I'm passing,
Oh,
or a
that's
hospice,
beautiful.
yes, to dissolve and transmute all negative energies. Yes, it's not going to dissolve everything, because there is a natural law
Balance.
of progress for balance, but even for court cases, if somebody's having a court case or a legal battle going on and you have to go into court, the violet flame is incredible for working on your behalf. It is. And then we have Archangel Metatron, who works with
Yeah.
the stellar gateway, which is our 12th chakra.
Yeah.
And he's incredible, and he works with the golden light and intuition and wisdom, you name it. And then we have Archangel Sandalphon, who works with the Earth Star, which is about 6 to
Below
10
your feet.
beneath our feet. And so we've loads of archangels, but you don't look at just call on anyone. Say, I don't really know you, but look, to be nice to get to know you. So whichever ye shows up, I'll pray to, or I'll ask for
Oh,
prayer.
yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
teach people.
Yeah.
If you can't remember who, just
Yeah, it
ask for
doesn't matter.
in love who is meant for your highest good and to be able to help best with the situation. And they'll
And the
come.
reality is, Lorilei, people a long time, even my own, bless my own local priest that was given out to me for many, many years. You know, when I'd say, the angels are not belong to the Catholic Church, and he said, well, yes, they are. And I said, no, angels transcend all church, all creed, all religion. I said, angels were made by God to connect with mankind, not the other way around. So I
Well,
said, you
plus
don't
they're in
have
all
ownership.
lore. They're in all religion and lore. They're not
They
just in the
are.
Catholic Bible. You
No,
can
they're in
find them anywhere.
everything. They're in the Kabbalah, they're in the Quran, they're in the
Yep.
Torah, they're in the
Yep.
Christianity, they're in Judaism, they're
Yep.
in everything. Yes, they're
No,
there.
I agree.
So they're for all creed. So when we speak of angels, they're non-denominational.
And
So they're lovely. I love them. I love working with them.
so do I. So do I. And you had said about the 100,000 angels. I imagine people can't even imagine that there are more angels than we could possibly even begin to fathom, aren't there?
And it's amazing, how our younger children they're very open now. We've a lot of wonderful children coming on earth, which are
Absolutely.
crystal children now. You probably are well aware of that, Laura.
Yes.
You're crystal children, and the crystal children that are coming in, they're coming in with no karma. They're crystal, their energies, their auras are crystal clear. They have not been in a human form before. And these beautiful children are coming in now to bring lots of love, compassion, and healing to the planet and to humankind. And now more than ever, we need those children. So it's important that we cultivate them, listen to them, because they are very psychic as well.
I've
very,
been
very
finding
intuitive.
that. Sorry, what was that?
They're very psychic and very intuitive. And it's important not to dismiss them.
Absolutely. Like I have actually been saying, I almost feel like we are bringing in a new human being because exactly for the reasons that you have said, and we're seeing this in children. But I always teach too, though. I always say, trust your pets and trust your children. When your child tells you they have an imaginary friend, it's not an imaginary friend, or an animal. But animals are very intuitive. If they're, I tell them, especially with the paranormal, I'll say, follow what your animals can see. I always believe it's because they live in the now. I don't know. What's your thoughts? Why children are able
Animals,
to see?
but children are but our children, you see, that why they are so connected. And this is what I have seen. This is what I've been shown. Children are so connected. They're still connected to the other side. Very, very, they're not contaminated vessels. They haven't been contaminated by dogma or by indoctrination, by society, by societal norms. They are innocent. They have to, so they're still very, very connected to the other side. And they're very aware of what's going on around them. They're extremely intuitive. So it's only then when what I have seen is when kids that are extremely gifted and psychic, it's only when they start going to school and then that the program the programs are being
Mhm.
enforced and the schooling is being enforced, and
Mhm.
it's like a different type of learning. So
Mhm.
what I always encourage is for parents that know that their children are born very psychically. Not every child is psychic,
I
but a lot of the children coming in now are
Mhm.
coming in with huge psychic abilities,
Mhm.
and it's so important to nurture it
I agree.
beyond the schooling, beyond
Oh,
the academic school.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I work with children, but only obviously with the parents' permission
Yes.
or guidance,
Cool.
because you do find a lot of parents that have no idea what to do with
Yeah.
this very special child. But I always say the beautiful thing about it is that you recognize that, and even though you may not know what to do,
Yeah.
you're reaching out to best support your child.
And
And
I suppose like that, Laura, parents are afraid because
oh yeah.
they don't have the tools,
Hmm.
and to say, oh God, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
It's like when somebody like I have it in whereafter, like when a child loses a parent, and bless anyone who has any child who has lost a parent, but there is a section there in it where there it's like a toolkit for guardians or the other parent or the grandparents to
Okay.
help the child to talk about their loved ones, because they do see their loved ones. They see their mom or their dad or their brother or
Hmm.
their sister. Because I've been called to many home and said, will you tell her to stop saying that? And the one of the girls, little girl, said, well, Mammy did come to me last night, and Mammy did brush my hair and stroke my
Oh.
hair, you know. And another girl said, Daddy called me his princess. Daddy sat on my bed and called me his princess. And this was a word she was hardly able to pronounce, but that's what he used to call her. So they are very, very, not to be dismissive of them, because they are, and as you said, they need to be listened to. They
Hmm.
need to be listened because they are connecting. And I have found when somebody has passed on belonging to them, they have full blown conversations with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
And some would find it abnormal.
Hmm.
Some would find it abnormal, but it's very normal for them.
Hmm.
And then I would advise. And what else did they say? You know,
Yeah.
what else did they say? How
Hmm.
did they look? Could you
Yeah.
describe it? You know,
Hmm.
whereas what was happening in a lot of situations in a lot of homes, go to your room, shut up, don't say that again. That's I've heard that time and time again. Go to your room. Don't let anyone hear you say that. They'll think
I
we're mad,
I
right?
have a moderator for my one group on Facebook, and she had seen our TV episode. She lives in Sardinia, Italy, and I knew Spirit told me within seconds, like, yeah, you need to connect with her. She's lost her mother, and she calls me her adopted mama, and I
Oh,
call her my adopted daughter. I don't have any girls, and she's so gifted. And she with Gavin, actually, Gavin Lee Davies, who introduced
oh
us.
yes.
I just adore him. He used to have a book, a magazine out called The Paranormal Chronicles. So I had written an article for it and had a few friends, and she was one of them because she's so brilliant. I think
Excuse
she's
me.
going to be 29. She speaks six
Wow.
languages and very
Wow.
gifted psychically, but she wrote what it was like to grow up as a child that was very psychically gifted, but no siblings, and their parents were her parents were staunchly Roman Catholic, and how exactly what you just said. And so she wrote from her perspective as a child about how she would have liked to have been best supported and what might best help children in the same situation. It was very powerful and very
Mm.
poignant. I was glad she did
And
it.
the thing is, Laura Lee, you see, parents don't have, they don't, a lot of them didn't have the coping skills. A lot of them didn't want to know that because they were afraid for the child,
Yes.
for fear the child would be deemed as weird or crazy or
Hmm.
away with the fairies, as they say here in Ireland, you
Yeah.
know. But it's great to be away with the fairies at times, because, you know, there's a lovely energy abounding with the fairy realm.
I have to have you back on.
My father used to connect with the fairies, you know, seriously.
I love the fairies. I love them.
My father and I used to say, oh my God, stop messing, because I didn't connect. I connected with angels, but he connected with fairies and the elementals. You know, all the nature.
I told you when I met you after Del's show that I thought never in a million years would I ever have a conversation with Del about fairies until, like, I think it was this summer. Now we've got a few minutes left. It's getting late there, I know, so I won't keep you much longer. But we've talked about so many powerful, incredible things. But let's talk a little bit about your book, because you've mentioned a few things. I think that this is such an incredible, amazing book that will be helpful for anybody, I think, to read. So is there certain parts that people, like, it answers so many questions, right, about what happens in the afterlife, or like you said, the toolkit?
Right. This book was totally guided, Lorilei, and like everything else that happens in my life, when I'm not listening to spirit, they do something happens to make me stop and listen. Like my cancer was my biggest gift upon Mother Earth. I'm very grateful for it. I see it as a gift now. And in 2018, I had a serious ski accident as well. And I was unable to walk for about 5 months.
Oh my.
So my guides were coming in the middle of the night, as they do, in the middle of the night. And they said, you need to write this book, because I was running many workshops for years and years, teaching people how to connect with their loved ones. And very, very powerful workshops. And so I was to write a book. I says, no, I have written for magazines, I've written booklets, I've written many things. But the idea of sitting down and writing a book, but anyway, it happened. But they showed it, I was to base it, because I have the scientific mind, on the scientific, the medical, and the spiritual, all the spiritual experiences that I have, not all of them, because only some of them are in my book, but I was shown the triangle, and it was based on spirituality, science, and medicine.
I love
and the proof, and the hundreds and thousands of doctors and scientists that support the afterlife. As I said in one interview, this is how is there is no proof, and I says, hold on a minute now. There is no doctor, no theologian, no scientist, no philosopher has ever stepped forward and presented evidence to say the afterlife did not exist. But huge, hundreds and thousands have presented cases for the afterlife.
Dr. Eben Alexander.
That's right. And he's only one of them. But
he didn't believe in anything.
Nothing, because he had the scientific mind. Yes. He didn't believe. And so did Brian Weiss, Dr. Brian Weiss.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I studied with him as well. Oh, and I mean, I studied with Dr. Brian Weiss and Deepak Chopra, the late Wayne Dyer. I've been very blessed. So the good Lord has been good to me. I've worked hard, though, to get there, to these places.
I believe it.
Of course. But Dr. Brian Weiss didn't believe in anything either, because he was a psychiatrist, head of psychiatry. And he thought, how can I tell there's a 27-year-old lady in my clinic and she's talking about past lives? And he didn't believe in anything until one day she said to him, at that time we didn't have Mr. Google. So he used to have to go home and validate the information she would give, going back hundreds and hundreds of years through history books, right? And then one day she gave him a huge piece of information. And one of it was pertinent to the son, his young son that died. Aww. And this was at a very early stage in infancy. So nobody knew about this baby, only his wife and himself. So that is when he became from skeptic to believer. There's many doctors. You mentioned Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross there much earlier. She started this afterlife phenomenon. But the afterlife has been proven. It's going back and documented thousands and thousands of years, as I said, going back to all those wonderful guys like Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. So my book it's very factual. It's easy to read. and it gives real life stories mixed between it, and it's based on the scientific evidence, which is
Hmm.
very real, and then the medical, all the wonderful doctors that have endorsed it, my experiences with clients, how to cope with grief, how to teach children who may have lost the loss of a loved one, how
Right.
to help them navigate the uncharted waters of grief. And then there is love and forgiveness at the very end,
I love that.
because love and forgiveness is key. They are key ingredients to a healthier life.
Hmm.
Even Einstein, dare I say it, Lorelei,
Yeah.
Einstein said that, and he believed in a supreme consciousness that
Mhm.
overlit our entire
He's
human
pretty
race.
active in the afterlife. I won't say
Yes,
too
I
much,
play
but
cards with him. I play cards with him
have you?
every now and
Okay,
then.
I don't
Yeah,
feel so silly telling you this, but
yeah.
I know he has. I connect with a couple very gifted mediums, getting channeling messages. I'm not doing the channeling. Apparently, I'm the receiver, whatever that is.
Oh, right. Yes.
And all three of us have a role to play, but we're getting information from spirit. And the last time we convened, it was Einstein. And my goodness, does he have a sense of humor? And so do we, though. And
Yeah.
apparently, the person that was receiving, it looked like a typewriter typing on screen in old MS DOS. And I forget what it was. And he was explaining something, and he put the theory of RE, and we all said
E
at the
equals
same
MC squared.
no, but we all said at the same time, dude, no way. None
Yeah.
of us do physics. You're going to have
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
something else. And the person that was receiving said, you literally seen it, each letter disappearing very slowly as
Yeah.
it was
And
retyping.
you see, that was one of his theories on evolution, that
Yes,
E
I
equals
know. Yeah.
MC squared.
Yeah.
But he said before, much later in life,
Mhm.
he said if we changed E equals MC squared to love multiplied by the speed of light squared,
Yes.
we'd end up with the most powerful energy on the planet, which
Hmm.
would be love.
Hmm.
We all need love. Love is a key for our healing, for our spiritual growth, to feel loved and to be loved. That is one of the most wonderful gifts, to know love
And
and to share it.
forgiveness. And
And
forgiveness, like you
forgiveness is
said.
huge, huge.
Hmm.
We could have another night on forgiveness. It's huge.
I could do so much. I've got so much every time. Like I didn't get this much time to talk to you. That's why I was so excited about having you on here, Mariel. I have to tell you, we've had beautiful comments here. People have been saying they could listen to us all night. So I have to have you back. Somebody put yes, please. So where can they get a hold of you and connect
Okay.
with you? Find your book and.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you. My book is available on all Amazon websites globally, and with John Hunt Publishing. And then my website is www.marielfordeclarke.com, and all my social media platforms are linked through that as
I
well.
found your website. It's very easy to find. I found it because I had the John Hunt publishing site from Gavin,
All
and I went,
right.
no, she's got to have a website. And it's a beautiful website, guys. There's lots of testimonials and all kinds of information. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here tonight. Oh,
Thank
my
you.
goodness. I love you. I just love you
I
so
bless
much.
you and
Hmm.
bless all your listeners, and I send them such love and
Oh,
blessings from my heart to theirs,
hmm.
each and every one of you.
Oh, you're an amazing lady. I'm so grateful. And like I said, Del doesn't say this about many people. And he was going on and on about yourself. And I was so grateful I got to meet you afterwards. And I only have one other guest. One of these nights, Del said the same thing. We're going to have to connect you. We told you about her, Varla Ventura, who
Oh,
is in the US and an
yes.
author. But all of her information, she's like a historian and she's so fascinating, but it's all from Celtic lore and Ireland, everything. She's written
Wow.
books about fairies and I think probably angels. And I knew
Yeah.
you guys would get along like a house on fire. We'll have to try and do that in the new year sometime,
Be
do a
lovely.
big show. But thank you so, so much. And I will have, if you're open to it, I will have you back again. And
Blessings.
we got lots to talk about.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much. It's been an honor and a blessing. So thank you, Laura Lee, and
No,
my love to
thank
Deb.
you, because it's got to be very, very late there. It's at 4 a.m.
It's just a little
Mm-hmm.
after it. So
Okay.
who cares about time?
I know you're a night person like I am. I want to
Yeah.
thank everybody here that was in the chat and for all your comments. And for those, if I missed you on Facebook, I apologize, but I don't always see the Facebook comments here, but I check them after. And just so you guys know, most people do, but these shows are carried wherever podcasts or talk radio is carried. I believe Joe has like 200 or 300 places around the world that he uploads these. So you'll be able to see this show again. Please share it with friends and get them to check out UPRN. We always have a show for everybody under all kinds of different topics. I will be back next Monday. Same time, same space with a very good friend, close friend of mine, Leanne Clarke, actually. She's from Atlanta, Georgia. And you never know what Leanne and I are going to talk about because sometimes we get into dimensions and I call her the crystal wizardress. She's amazing. She's got beautiful energy, just like most of my light worker friends I have on here, including yourself. If you ever want to get a hold of me, you can reach out to me at facebook.com/Angel Rock. I have 2 groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for all things paranormal. And it's a place to learn, basically. That's why it's called university. And then the Angel Rocker Tribe for many of the things we talked about tonight, the power of the mind, power of positive thinking, and so on. I send you guys and ladies so much love and light. And good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. And we will see you next Monday. And again, Mariel, thank you so, so much. Mwah. Thank you.
Namaste, my angel.
Namaste.